Hi, my name's Chuck with Inventive Products. Wanted to take a few moments and talk to you about the Verminator Burrow Builder. I grew up in a small town in Idaho called Bruno, and most of my youth was spent trapping gophers. I worked for farmers and ranchers as a young man who believed that the only way to control a gopher was to trap it. So you had him in your hand and you knew you had him. I had seen burrow builders around but didn't really understand them. Really thought they were kind of a snake oil machine. One of the things that was interesting to me as we went on our tour from farm to farm talking to these progressive farmers is, a lot of the damage comes from the hay machines running over the mounds, but really the real big concern is what you don't see. It's the damage underneath. So we wanted a machine that you would never regret purchasing, and we really feel this is the machine that hits the mark. Some of the things about it that you need to know to be successful in controlling gophers is proper machine setup. You must build a nice quality tunnel that holds its shape after the machine's gone through the field. The longer the tunnel holds its shape, the more chances you have for a gopher to enter it and eat the bait. Everything starts up front with the machine. So we use a spring-loaded Coulter assembly, and it also is steerable. It follows the direction of the tractor. This is really important. We also use the ripple blade on it. We think the ripple blade's the best blade out there. As the Coulter wheel is going through the field, it's slicing corn stalks or roots, and it's making a way for the shear to go through the field. Another thing that we've done is we've purchased our Coulters with a spring installed, and what that does is it allows the Coulter wheel to move up and down. If you don't run the spring, what happens is as the machine's going through the field, if you encounter a rock, the Coulter wheel doesn't move up. It lifts the whole machine out of the ground, and then you start the process over. With a spring-loaded Coulter wheel, it has the ability to move up and down with the terrain. We recommend that when you're running it that you keep the Coulter wheel in the ground about as far as you can, and that's achieved through this adjustment system we have right here, so you can raise and lower the Coulter assembly. As we move back on the machine, we get back to the shear assembly, and the shear is really one of the most critical aspects in building a quality tunnel. It's very frustrating to us when we get compared to machines that don't have near the effort put into the shear that we do. We have a parabolic shaped hard chrome alloy point that lasts a long time. It's also got the bull nose on it that's a lot like the nose of a submarine, and the idea of this is that as it's going through the ground, it's slicing the roots and it's lifting the dirt and letting the dirt close back behind the shear. The idea is to not disturb the ground. We're very proud of the fact that a lot of golf courses use this machine. The other key feature of our shear is that this tunnel tube right here, if you were to remove this spray paint, it's hard chromed. We actually sent it off and had it chromed. And the reason we have it chromed is one, for wear properties, but the big feature is to make it slick. So as you're pulling it through the ground, it's smooth against the tunnel walls, and it's shaping a tunnel so that the mud and the dirt doesn't collapse behind it. We see a lot of machines on the market with a really short tunnel tube, and it makes absolutely no sense to us because the tube doesn't stay in the ground long enough to shape the tunnel. If you had a really short tube, when you pull it through the ground, the dirt's just going to collapse right behind it. The other disadvantage to a short tube is that as you go through the field, if it's short and the tractor just oscillates slightly, the tube starts going through the field like this, and you don't get a tunnel. You really need to consider the shear and the design of it. Our tunnel tube is 45 inches long. We do that for a purpose. One of the problems we've noticed is, I'm going to use this to simulate the tunnel tube, is when you're pulling the machine through the field, you want the tunnel tube to be pulling perfectly flat underneath the ground. If you have the 3-point adjusted improperly and the tunnel tube kicks up a little at the back, as you pull through the field, it's making an enlarged hole or an oblong tunnel, and the dirt collapses around it. So what we want you to do when you set up the machine is we want to make sure that the machine, as you're pulling it through the field, that the tunnel tube stays perfectly level to the ground as you're going through it. 1 or 2 slight quarter turns on your top link on your 3-point really affects the pitch of this tunnel tube. Another thing we found is that a lot of farmers, like when you're plowing or ripping, you want that to go right into the ground, and this machine is different. If you tilt the tunnel tube so that the shear and the tunnel tube so that it spikes into the ground really fast, you're going to go through the field like this. This is very exaggerated. So what we want you to do is, it should be parallel when it's underground at the depth that your gophers are tunneling. So you should pull the machine, and it's probably going to take 35, 45 feet before this machine is clear underground, because your tube is running parallel. And that's why when you're looking at investing in a burrow builder, weight is very critical, because you don't have no point to spike it into the ground. You're running parallel to the ground, so it's going to be a slow entrance into the ground. Another key thing that you need to do is you need to go out with a probe and probe into the ground and locate where the gophers are. Find that tunnel depth. You want to adjust the wheel so that it's at that depth. If you're running your tunnel tube below the tunnel or above the tunnel, you won't have as much success. The idea is, as you pull the machine through the field, you're intersecting the tunnels. Another key feature in having a quality burrow builder is the ability to adjust the wheel up and down. We have a whole bunch of adjustment holes so that you can get real fine adjustment out of the machine. It's really critical that you set the machine so that the tunnel tube is running at the depth that your tunnels are in your field or your burrows. Adjustment of this is very simple. You remove these 4 bolts. They're 3/8 bolts, use a 9/16 end wrench, and then you just adjust this adjustment rod right here, and then it raises and lowers the wheel, and you put the bolts back in. In continuing to tell you about the features and benefits of the machine, I want to talk a little bit about this sight tube. Seems simple enough that this is clear plastic, but what it does for you when you're operating from the tractor seat is that you can look back, and this is in your line of sight, and it shows the bait dropping so that you know as you're going through the field that the bait is being metered properly. Our metering plate system is very robust. We have 2 preset holes in here. A lot of people call and ask if we offer different sizes. While we can do different sizes, we really recommend that you don't. And the reason we recommend that you leave these is that we've actually been working really close with universities, colleges, extension offices, farmers, and most importantly, the bait manufacturers. Over the last 15 years, we've developed a metering plate hole that we feel works great for diphasonones, and it worked great for the strychnine-based baits. If you do want a custom size, we can do that for you, but we don't recommend it. Here you see the agitator bolts operating in our metering plate. The importance of agitator bolts is that if your bait ever gets a little bit of moisture in it and it starts to coagulate or ball or clump up, the agitator bolts are constantly stirring the bait before it goes down the tube. Another advantage of our hopper is that it has a divider in it. By using a divider, you could run alternating baits, diphasonones or a strychnine-based bait, one on the other, or you could just fill both sides of the hopper with one type of bait. Some people will even just fill one side of the hopper if they want to control the bait drop. Now we're up to the hopper. We had quite a bit of debate of whether we're going to switch to some plastic or stay with this aluminum hopper. We decided to stay with the aluminum hopper, and the reason is just the UV protection. We all know that plastic, as it sets out in the sun, it tends to get brittle, and we really felt the aluminum hopper was the way to go. It can be padlocked on both sides. Currently it ships with a lynch clip in it. We've also installed a secondary latching mechanism to help prevent the lid from opening should you forget to lock it. We always recommend that the hopper lid stays locked. But with this safety tab on it, if a horse comes up and tries to open it, it's going to prevent the lid from getting open. Then you push the tab and it comes open. Most bait comes in 5-gallon buckets. You're going to have ample room in this hopper to put a 5-gallon bucket full of bait. We have a clear sight glass that helps you monitor the bait as it's coming down. Its second purpose is when it comes time to clean out, you just unscrew it. We have a clean out at the back. You can get your hands in here, or you can vacuum it out, and then when the final residue is there, then you could remove the rear drain plug, and then you can stick a hose in here and wash it out. We're really proud of this feature. An often overlooked feature of the Verminator Burrow Builder is the rear tire. We fill each and every Verminator rear tire with bioballast. By adding bioballast, we're adding additional weight to the machine to help keep it into the ground. And it's also to help pack the burrow after the machine has gone over it. We come out with a new drawbar attachment that bolts onto the machine. It's retrofittable. It'll fit any other Verminator out there that bolts on with 2 bolts, and it allows you to pull a harrow behind it or a drag of some sort. We also added a tire scraper that comes standard with the drawbar, so that as the mud builds up, the tire scraper takes the mud away. We've designed our own custom drag assembly that we think really just makes the machine shine. As it's pulled through the field, the shape of it really funnels the dirt right back to the center of the tunnel, and it does a great job of knocking down the mounds. And some of the other features that we sell as an option is a lot of people with really tight soils, even though the machine is up around 600 pounds, they need additional weight. So we offer a bolt-on weight basket that you could fill up with 2 90-pound bags of concrete, add some water to it. You could also put tractor weights in it. The choice is yours. What we'd like you to do is get another 150 to 200 pounds of weight on top of the machine. So now you get up in that 800 to 900 pound range, which really helps keep the machine in the ground on really hard soils. All 3 of them attachments are available through your local dealer as an option. We recommend all 3 of them if you really want the machine to perform at its peak performance. I want to give you something else to think about. Another consideration. When you use a burrow building machine and you make that tunnel underground, that bait sits in that tunnel for 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the moisture in the ground and some other variables. But it just keeps working and working throughout the whole field. One of the disadvantages to trapping or gassing is once you pull that trap, there's nothing else working in the field. Or when you're gassing, once you pull the hose out of the ground, that's it. I know from growing up trapping gophers that you're only going to cover 1 to 2 acres per hour with traps. With this machine, you could be talking several dozens of acres per hour of application. When you look at the cost of the machine and the effectiveness of it, I think you'll see that the true choice is obviously going with a burrow building machine. We're so confident in the effectiveness of this machine that we're offering a 30-day money-back guarantee. Probably the proudest feature that I have to share with you about the Verminator is that it's all built in America. We find great sense of pride in doing that. In our shop, we have a bell that sounds every time a Verminator sells. And when we hear that bell, we get excited because that's more work for each and every one of us. So every time somebody buys a Verminator, I want you to know from my heart that we really, truly appreciate the opportunity to serve you and the opportunity to have more work. Thanks.